Yo, what's up, everybody? It's We Talking About Sports. We're here with another edition of WTBS On the Wire. It's week 4, a little two-man show today. I'm joined here by Ben. Ben, what's up? Hopefully you're having a good evening. I'll throw it to you here in a little bit. But first, week 3 is in the books. The upsets continue. Big spreads are losing all over the place. If you're playing Survivor, complete carnage out there. Not a lot of people left, including our league, where we had 60 entries down to single digits now. Low scoring trends continue. So fantasy players, what we're about to talk about right now, struggling to find points out there. A lot of disappointments we're going to get to. And injury carnage continues yet another week. Ben, before I preview a little bit about what we're going to get into today, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Just had dinner watching these Dana White Tuesday night contender fights. Always love this time of year
There
because
we go.
on Tuesday nights we get five, fights of prospects who are looking to get into the UFC. So enjoying that and eager to talk about the wire. I got a couple of decisions to make myself. So I'm glad that me and you are going to chop it up together, talk things
Yeah.
out and maybe get a clearer mind here going into the bidding wars that are, some of us that play fab waiver wire fantasy
Yeah.
football. So
Yeah.
excited for this week,
Definitely.
bro.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's kind of a light week on the wire, but to your point, season-long leagues, redrafts, you always have to be looking to tweak your team. Injuries, as we've discussed, are happening, across the league, so you're more than likely affected, hopefully not too much, to where you are going to have to, on a week 4 where the names aren't that crazy out there, you might have to go and look at some names to bolster that lineup for some immediate help. Week 5 is when buys get started, so no buys yet. I know some major teams go on bye next week with the Lions and Eagles. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But lastly, before we get into it, guys, we have injury report. A few guys on the wire, very light this week. And then some long shots, as Justin and I touched on last week. Had some success there with Yoshi Voss on Monday night. Have you caught that? And then Quentin Johnson, also another guy we talked about. But we're going to do some keeper cut. I think we're at that point in the year where, you have preconceived notions going into the year about what you think a guy's going to do. Where his ADP's at, kind of where the value's at going into the year. But hey, that's all on paper. You got to go out and play the games, and we have 3 games to go on. It's not the biggest sample size, but I think it's enough for us to start forming opinions. And as we're talking about with season-long leagues, making some decisions. So Ben, are you excited about keeper cut?
I am. When we make these little slides, as you may say, we throw in some names, and some of these names sit close to the vest. So like I said, I'm eager to get some opinions
Yeah.
here, chop some things up. Got some questions. Like you said, there's some guys that if maybe you punted on running back and went wide receiver, you might have gotten those mid-round running backs and they're not producing. They might have been sharing a backfield and they're just not the guy. So it might be time to just cut ties with them instead of wasting that roster spot.
Yep, very good point. It's a hard decision. You got to remove emotion because again, you have your strong opinions going into the year. It doesn't always go as planned, but you got to act quickly because if you don't, you're going to be left behind in most draft leagues and competitive leagues. But before all of that, we always recap the injuries. Carnage continues yet again. There's more names that I could put on these 4 blocks, but these were the 4 biggest in my opinion. Adam Thielen, part of that Carolina resurgence with the red rifle, the red rocket, and Andy Dalton gets injured on an epic touchdown pass. He's on the IR. Devonta Smith and Trey McBride, both in the concussion protocol, and Sam Laporta looks like he avoids major injury, only a low ankle sprain and day-to-day. But Ben, how are you going to handle these injuries with Devonta Smith and Trey McBride? Concussion protocol, not really the best injury to get tagged with, depending on the severity. What are your thoughts on those 2 guys?
I'm a McBride owner. I did stack him in several leagues with Kyler Murray, so I am planning for him to be out this weekend. I'm a little bit. He's tight end 6, and I'm a little bit disappointed with production from that position based on where we draft him at. But it's just that type of year for the tight end. I also have a little bit of Laporta planning. I'm just planning for the worst with the tight end. I don't think that you're missing out on much, and it might be okay to have a backup, especially with Laporta having an ankle injury. That's something that can be nagging and just re-aggravated quickly. So it's always good to have a backup. There's guys like we might talk about Cole Kmet, some others, but there is other tight ends that it's early on in the season, only week 3, where you might be able to get that guy that stays hot for several weeks.
Yep.
So I'm looking to get some depth at tight end and at quarterback on the waiver wire personally this week.
There we go. I like that. Always got to be planning ahead for the quarterback position. Poach those matchups in upcoming weeks. The one guy I'm going to talk about, and it's just because the overall team seems to be going through it right now, is Devonta Smith with the concussion. Also went down in that game. I believe Lane Johnson suffered an injury on the offensive line. He's their key cog up there as a left tackle. They're already down AJ Brown. So kind of you start looking around with the Eagles. You're down AJ Brown. You're down Devonta Smith. Your next best target is Saquon Barkley, and then you go into Dallas Goedert, who had a big game in week 3. So look for those guys to continue to step up. Goddard and Barkley, he's been a smash this year. And then Thielen, look for maybe some of the other backup receivers to come and step up. But that's it for me. Trey McBride, that hit was nasty. He wanted all the contact and he got all of it. Ended up on the floor for a little while, but hopefully they're able to, play and play safely here this next week. Don't want to take concussions lightly. But let's get into it. It's the waiver wire. We got 3 guys to talk about. This next guy here, his name is Bucky Irving. I don't know if a lot of you guys have heard about him, but he's only 33% owned. He is Rachaad White's natural backup. He is the cuff to Rachaad White, the receiving running back for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Week 3 was probably the best performance of Bucky Irving's career so far. 9 carries, 70 yards. He's starting to get a little bit of early down work, but still paling in comparison to Rachaad White when it comes to the receiving game. Rachaad White, that is his specialty. But despite all that, he still came up with 11 points. Got a decent matchup with Philadelphia. Teams have had success against them, although it looks like they cleaned things up against the Saints this past week. And again, only owned in 33% of leagues. For me, I got to read the tea leaves a little bit. The Bucks, they've already come out and said this guy has earned more snaps going forward. So when I hear that, if he's out there in deeper leagues, I think he might be worth a stash because, as we've talked about in the beginning, I think scoring league-wide is down. So if you're in a pinch in one of these bye weeks and you're hurting at a flex, I mean, putting Bucky Irving in your lineup might not be the worst thing to do. He's in a timeshare with the Bucks. They can move the ball. Ben, what are your thoughts on Bucky Irving? Obviously not going to spend too much on him unless you have reason to do so. But what are your thoughts on the rookie running back?
Yeah, I think maybe if you're somebody that punted on running back, but he doesn't have the starting job. Like you said, this is a stash position. If you're somebody that can afford to stash a running back, then maybe. We know that the Bucks like to air it out with Baker. Godwin is up there as a top 5 wide receiver so far fantasy wise. So he is splitting, albeit splitting. He's averaging double figures. That's kind of what you want in a flex. Some leagues are 2 flex leagues. He definitely has the juice over, what you see from Rachaad White. Yeah. So it's kind of that change of pace, but I don't think that they go away from Old Faithful, which is Rachaad White. Like you said, on the ground, he hasn't been very efficient. Through the air, it's kind of his specialty. He is a better receiving back. But it comes a point where maybe Rachaad White does turn into the 3rd down back and Bucky Irving is a 1st and 2nd down back. I don't see him winning the job permanently, but he could start, like I said, outworking him on the ground rather than receiving wise.
Definitely, I agree with you there. I don't think he'll have a full, takeover of that backfield. But to your point, he could turn into the early down guy because that seems to be the Bucks' problem early on in the year. They're getting themselves, kind of not necessarily behind the sticks, but they find themselves in a lot of 3rd and longs. At least they did against the Broncos. And then when they got Bucky Irving in the game, he busted a few runs. So you're going to want to put yourself in those in better positions on 3rd down. And I think Bucky Irving might be the guy for them. Maybe he starts getting some goal line looks, but I agree with everything that Ben said. Rachaad White's still going to maintain the receiving prowess. Don't think that's going to be taken from him. And he is old reliable for all intents and purposes for this team. So I think Bucky Irving is worth a look, especially because, again, I like that the coaches came out and said immediately after the game that this guy has earned himself more snaps and more work. So let's see what he does with it going forward. Maybe those 9 carries, he's projected to hit double digits in week 4, albeit it's just one more carry that he got than week 3. But I like that. It's just, you want touches in fantasy football, and he's got at least 10 if you're looking at it going forward. All right, next guy. We talked about him last week. And most, I would say, competitive leagues or deeper leagues, he may have been taken out last week due to the injury carnage with the 49ers, but he's still only 36% owned, coming off the fantasy game of the year so far, 46 points. You see it up there, 11 catches, 12 targets, almost 200 yards receiving, 3 tuds in a loss versus the Rams. An epic game if you guys watched that. Got a favorable matchup against the Patriots, although they do have a good defensive back in Christian Gonzalez, but they are ranked 26 per ESPN. Projected to hit double digits again. He's going to be the alpha in terms of the receiver. Well, not alpha actually, because they still got Brandon Ayuk, but he's going to be the number 2 if Kittle stays out. What are your thoughts on Jennings? Are you spending a lot of your fab on this guy, or are you just trying to get him if you can get him? Like, what's your vibe with this guy? Because you got to think Debo comes back, Kittle comes back, and then he gets bumped down.
If you need an auto start, this is an auto start. Bucky Irving is a stash guy. That's an investment. That's if you can waste a roster spot. Jennings, you got to start him while Debo's out. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that he's not a flex option when Debo comes back, but right now he's a smash spot. You mentioned they play the Patriots, and you mentioned Gonzalez. Gonzalez is probably going to be shadowing Ayuk, meaning that Jennings is going to be the alpha again this week. It was heartbreaking, bro, as a Brandon Ayuk owner. I mean, seeing every time Purdy threw the ball and it was a reception, you see the one and you think, oh, maybe it's Ayuk. Nope, Jennings again. It was automatic. And even dating back to week 1, you know, when Ayuk and Deebo Samuel were both playing, Jennings still put up 9, 10 full PPR points. I think he had like 5 catches for 50 yards or 4 for 60. He was at about 10 points. So I think he's a staple there. We know that they drafted the rookie, Ricky Pearsall. He's scheduled to come back, I believe, week 5. He's eligible to come back from getting fucking shot in the chest, bro. That's crazy.
San Francisco, scary place right now.
Yeah. But if you need a flex or if you need a wide receiver too, because, you know, the guys that you drafted just aren't cutting it at the moment, I think that you do have to spend on Jennings because he has wide receiver 1 upside like we just saw last week. We're going to be seeing Ayuk get shadowed, Roland. So he's got another big game coming.
Put it in perspective for me, though, in terms of fab. And how much of your fab in terms of percentage are you trying to spend on this guy? And then I'll give you my take.
If I'm starting him, if I'm in the position where I'm not
season long, you're thinking about spending on your fab. I mean, you're not going to get this fab back.
It's because personally, I'm somebody who drafts wide receiver heavy, so I'm not in the business of spending for this guy because I'm set for the season. But if I needed somebody,
let's say you had what's it called,
out of a $200 budget, I'm willing to throw $40 on Jennings, and if that gets him, it gets him. I mean, we've seen tight ends go for $70, so it might not do it, but that's just in my budget. I'm willing to go 40. So I think that's what a quarter of the budget.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's about 20%. So I'm there with you. I may be a little bit lower than that, just because I do think once the true alphas come back, like Debo, Kittle, who knows what happens with CMC. I do think that Juwan Jennings is going to get bumped down. I do like that, you know, with the workload that he's getting, he obviously has that trust with Purdy. It dates all the way back to last season or last postseason. So there's obviously something there. I do think that he's in a position to smash again this week. It's just all for me. It's like, if you're talking about spending more than 25%, you're talking about spending 30% on this guy. I would hope that you're doing it with, you know, the intention of continuing to play him throughout the year. Because as it stands to me, I think he's going to be a smash this week. And then it's going to be all dependent in terms of, you know, who's
Debo
in front of him.
Back. Yeah, Debo might be
exactly.
back in 2 weeks. It's not like CMC where Mason is kind of the guy here for at least 8 or 9 weeks. What I will say, Roland, is with the Niners and with Jennings, bro, he's going to be the target. If he's a free agent, this is going to be the top pickup of this waiver wire.
True. If he's out there,
guaranteed. So that's why I'm saying you're probably going to have to pay to get him because he's going to be the one guy guaranteed to be picked up this waiver wire.
And you know, with all the injuries that have happened this year, you know, 2 more receivers just went down, and you know, Devonta Smith with the concussion and Adam Thielen with the hamstring. And if you were I've seen some, and I'm just saying all this to say that I've seen some rosters out there with some true injury carnage where, you might have no other choice but to make sure that you get Juwan Jennings so you don't go 0-4 this week. Because, going 0-4 in fantasy, we've been talking about it going, 0-2 or 0-3 in real life. 0-4 in fantasy is almost a kiss of death. I don't know if you can come back from that. So depending on your desperation, I do agree. You're going to want to spend on him for this week. But if you're not in a spot to where it's like a nice to have with Jennings, I wouldn't spend more than like 15 to 20%, but don't expect to get him at that point. So yeah, it's tough just with everything that's surrounding this position. Next one and last one on the list. This one's a little bit more of a long shot too, but I just like it because he is the guy that's next in line with the injury to Adam Thielen is Xavier Legette. He was a lot of guys, favorite personality. He's got that country voice. If you've heard him talk, definitely, worth a listen. Didn't have the best stat line last week, but that is because, Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard were eating all game. 2 catches, 42 yards. Expected an increase in workload this next week. Projected for about 10 fantasy points. Only 20% owned in leagues. Has a decent matchup against the 49ers, who that secondary has been giving it up. You saw what the Rams did to them this past week. Ben, what are your thoughts on Xavier Legette? If you're not necessarily in on him, fantasy wise, do you think that he can succeed in this role with the Panthers and Andy Dalton?
That's where I was going to get at. I'm not picking him up in any hopes of starting him. What I will say is, and we're both in the same league, and it's the only keeper league I have. But this is a stash for maybe a keeper league because he's one of those rookies where we know that he has it in him. We know he's a dog. The Panther situation going forward determines this guy's career for the most part. We know that for this season, Andy Dalton is probably going to be the starter for the foreseeable end of the year. So maybe, in deeper leagues, you might be able to play him once bye weeks come if Thielen stays out enough. But for keeper purposes, I'm not mad at stashing him and, just seeing what he turns into for a possible, very, very late round keeper next year if he ends up being one of those guys.
Yeah, good point. In keeper leagues, he is especially valuable if you can get him with that free agent tag. And who knows, maybe he turns up here in the middle of the year towards the end and he solidifies himself a nice role going forward because Adam Thielen not getting any younger. They did bring in Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh. He's still got some tread on the tires, as we've seen. But Xavier
he's a complete different receiver than Deontay Johnson as well.
Yeah, complete. He's going to be playing a completely different role. You're right. I mean, he was if you watched him play at South Carolina, he really only had 1 year production. But in that 1 year last year, he was a complete monster. Got a lot of, what people like to call in the fantasy streets, like manufactured touches, a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of drags, a lot of screens, hard guy to tackle. So maybe he gets a little bit of that here in this Carolina offense. They find a way to get him the ball. I like Mario Canales as a play caller. Definitely like the boost that Andy Dalton has given the team. And boy, not a good look for Bryce Young to have Andy Dalton come in and succeed like that. I know we're not talking about that right now, but hey, we're talking about the Panthers as a potential, waiver wire pickup here with Xavier Legette. So yeah, just crazy how things can change in 1 week. Anything else on Xavier Legette before we go on to our long shots and then get to some keeper cut?
I'm a fan of the guy, and I hope he pans out. I really do.
Yeah, let's do it. And yeah, hopefully we can get some more sound bites from Xavier Legette also. All right. Some long shots here. Not going to spend too much time here, but I do think there are some names worth talking about from stash perspective. And then just the tight end role just being low. And that's where I'll start. Noah Fant had his best game of the season. Seahawks offense really starting to hum. I like what I'm seeing out of Ben Grubbs and Johnson, the head coach. Noah Fant had 6 catches, 60 yards in week 3, only owned in 4% of leagues and 6 catches for 60 yards. That's 12 points. And trust me, I will take that out of the tight end position right now. 12 points is great for that position. You got Roshan Johnson, running back out of the Bears, Emmanuel Wilson, backup for the Packers. Justin Fields, quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Got to give him his shine. I've been a big detractor of him, but he's done good so far. They're 3-0. Can't say anything else. And Luke McCaffrey had a pretty decent game. Again, these are all light stashes. The one that's owned the most is Justin Fields at 24%, but otherwise all less than 5. Ben, any guy that you want to spend some time on here?
I'll touch on the 2 running backs just briefly. What I will say is, for the Bears are trying to find something. They're trying to find something, some sort of spark out of that backfield. We might talk about their starting running back in the next segment, so I don't want to, you know, go too in on that. But the thing that makes me pump the brakes on that is the O line is all time bad. I don't think that it's all on the backfield. I think that O line is very, very bad. Not too interested in Roshan, although he's a Longhorn. Now, when you get to Emmanuel Wilson, we've seen the Green Bay Packers have a running back by committee with AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones in the past. Now here
Yep.
they get, they go and get Josh Jacobs this weekend. Emmanuel Wilson out snaps Josh Jacobs or out touches him, however you want to put it, scores a receiving touchdown as well. I'm not mad at stashing Wilson just because we know that the Green Bay Packers have that MO of, feeding two running backs as long as the second guy is, willing to oblige. We know AJ Dillon was kind of a dud, although he was being drafted as kind of
Yeah.
that Detroit Lions, AJ Gibbs and Montgomery two-back system. People were drafting AJ Dillon 2 years ago with hopes of flexing him or RB2 potential. So I'm not mad at Wilson.
Yeah, no, Wilson definitely had me a little tilted as a Josh Jacobs owner, seeing him take that screen pass there for a touchdown. To Ben's point, 12 carries, 50 yards, and he made work with that target that he got, although he did have another one, 2 total catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown. So Emmanuel Wilson, I think he's important. If you're a Josh Jacobs owner, Josh Jacobs, he's a hard runner. He's known to get nicked up every now and again, durable for the most part, but could be out a week or two here. Who knows with that increased workload with, Malik Willis being the quarterback, although he has looked good. But yeah, Emmanuel Wilson's especially interesting. The guy that I'll touch base on here, and I mentioned it, I've been a detractor of his, but it's Justin Fields, the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's looked good. He's been running the ball at a pretty high rate, although the yards haven't been there. He did get into the end zone as a runner this past week. Has looked good so far. Playing a little bit more under center than he's used to, but still I can't argue with the results. 3-0, including some pretty good victories. Own 24%, and I'm bringing him up now because I mentioned at the beginning of the show, bye weeks get kicked off in week 5. You got Jalen Hurts on bye. More than likely didn't draft a backup if you drafted Jalen Hurts in the 3rd or 4th round. And then you got Jared Goff, who is probably a starter on most teams. I know I've seen him as a starter in most of my leagues. Maybe have a backup in that build, but if not, I think Justin Fields got a nice matchup in week 5 against my Dallas Cowboys, who they can't stop a bloody nose right now. Our minds are on other things, talking about podcasts and, other stuff that I can't mention on this podcast, from Jerry Jones. But Justin Fields, good little stash pickup, in my opinion, if you're looking for a quarterback spot in week 5. Always like to look a week ahead. And then the other guy that I'll touch on is Roshan Johnson. To Ben's point, they are trying to find something in Chicago. We'll talk about DeAndre Swift here in a little bit. But yeah, I like these guys. It's a list of dudes that if you can, afford it without having to do too much, because obviously these guys are not starters on their respective teams. Luke McCaffrey's not a target monster by any stretch of the imagination. But just to touch on him, it's Scary Terry, Zach Ertz, and then it's Luke McCaffrey almost. They traded away Jahan Dotson to the Eagles, so
And Eckler's
maybe
hurt now.
And Eckler's hurt, so who knows? Maybe McCaffrey, CMC's little brother, steps up a little bit, and he puts on for the family name while his older brothers in Germany getting checked out. But Ben, anything else on long shots you want to touch on before we get to keep or cut and wrap up the show?
No, I would like to have a small conversation about the Cowboys backfield. We can talk about it on keep or cut, or we can do it on long shots. I think that Dowdle might be available in some people's leagues as one of those deep free agents. But as a Cowboys fan that you are, I did want to kind of get your perspective on, is it even worth, stashing one of those Cowboys guys, or is it time to just cut ties with that backfield entirely? We can get into that in the next segment.
I don't think so. We can talk about it real quick here on long shots. To your point, I do think that Dowdle should throughout the year start to take more of that backfield. It's clear to me Zeke Elliott completely washed. I don't think he has any juice right now. He's a good pass protector. I think that's why he's in the game as much as he is, and he's a sure hand coming out of the receiving out of the backfield. But I take Dowdle as a little bit of a stash. That offense is not going to be that bad all the time. At least you would hope. Just with Dak Prescott at quarterback, you got CeeDee Lamb. You're going to be moving the ball. You are going to have advantageous positions to be in as a running back in that goal line. And I think Rico Dowdle is going to start earning himself a little bit more run. So to Ben's point, if he's out there, definitely might be worth a stash. And if, on the flip side, and we'll lead this into keeper cut, if you have Zeke, I think you're good cutting ties with Zeke. Honestly, I don't think he has juice. And you're just going to be
I
wasting
think
a
only the
roster
guys
spot.
that own his jersey still have him on the roster, bro. There's nobody that doesn't own his jersey that has him rostered. No shot.
Yeah, I mean, I still got that 21 jersey hanging up in my closet, but do not have him rostered. I thought about getting the 15, but I mean, after the first 3 games, I'm like, you know what, Zeke, I'm gonna have to hold off on that. And for all jerseys for the Cowboys,
Inflation, Zeke.
yeah,
Inflation.
exactly. So, anyways, we teased it at the beginning. We're gonna wrap up with some keeper cut here. Been a light week on the wire, but as always, season-long leagues, you got to make these tweaks. You got to make these hard decisions. Some of them are emotional. We're going to go by one on these 4 guys listed up here. They're all
some big names.
Yeah, they're all pretty big names, all pretty valuable in terms of the draft capital that you spent on them. So from left to right, I'm going to read off the last 3 weeks of performance. Might throw in some other numbers there, but for the most part, just last 3 weeks. And then, Ben, let me know what you think, and we'll go from there. First guy, Zamir White. He is the starting running back for the Raiders. I had a lot of expectation as, being that starting running back with a coach in Pierce that was thought to want to run the ball, has said you get the ball in Josh Jacobs, their former running back's hand, as much as you can, they're going to do good. Thought that would translate to Zamir White. Not so much. First 3 weeks, 13 carries, 44 yards, 4.6 points in week 1. 9 carries, 24 yards, 6.8 in week 2. 10, 34, and 3.4 in week 3. 0 touchdowns. Madison has gotten that work from him. Ben, are you cutting or keeping Zamir White here in week 4?
I might have gotten 2 to 3 shares of Zamir White, and that's probably why he's up here. Although he fits the case, he fits the bill 100%.
Definitely.
Roland, I'm cutting all ties. I was wrong. Not afraid to admit I was wrong. I don't know if I want to be too involved with that Raiders offense in general.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
I have some Devontae Adams regretting it as well right now. Some people saying that Antonio Pierce's, shots at the players, saying some people were making business decisions and we're going to make business decisions going forward. Very bold statement to make in the 3rd game of your 2-year contract. Some people were saying that was aimed at Devontae Adams. He already said that they're going to a QB change. He threatened that as well. The Raiders are a mess, bro. The Raiders are a mess. I think that Bowers, the rookie tight end, might be the only, auto start just based off that position and what it has to offer right now. But I'm completely out on Zamir White. I'm dropping him this week in hopes of a Bucky Irvin, in hopes of maybe a Sam Darnold. He's out there in a couple of leagues. I'm looking to get a backup quarterback for Josh Allen or Kyler Murray because if I go that high on quarterback, I don't draft the backup. Now I'm looking to drop Zamir White and possibly get that backup quarterback.
There you go. Start planning for those bye weeks and get the best possible option out there. I like that. And I agree with all of what you said, really. And the main piece is, I don't know how involved anybody wants to be with that Raiders offense. Devontae Adams was kind of already a stay away for me. I didn't want to just risk that with the, Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, quarterback room, not true trustworthy. And then Zamir White. The one thing that got me was when I saw Madison stealing the goal line work. I mean, what are we doing here? I thought Zamir White was the de facto starter, the guy that was going to get the work. But here comes Madison off a disappointing year in Minnesota to vulture. First 2 weeks for sure, and I want to say he scored last week too.
It was week 1 and 3. He got a touch.
Yeah,
but Roland, he's only getting like 3 or 4 carries. Madison.
Yeah, but he's not even in the goal line though. I know you can't even start Madison, but it's taking away value from Zamir White. And it's kind of frustrating because those 3 to 4 carries, I mean, I just read the stat line. He's gotten 13, 9, and 10 carries. hasn't broken 50 yards, if you add at least a 6 points, in one of those weeks, maybe we're not having this conversation because you're like, hey, he's at least getting that goal line work. So it's kind of scary. I would cut Zamir White. Don't have any of them. I would cut him. Pretty easy decision, and start, trying to build out, the rest of your roster, trying to fill in that some of those back spots, like Ben said, with backup quarterback. Next guy, another running back. This guy I have on my team. I have one share of him. It's DeAndre Swift. He's a starting running back for the Bears. Same thing with White here. First 3 weeks, week 1, 10 carries, 30 yards, 5 points. Week 2, 14 carries, 18 yards, 8 points because he got some receiving work. 13 carries, 20 yards, a little more than 1 yard a carry, folks. Not even 2 yards a carry last week, or last 2 weeks, rather. 6.2 points because he's still getting receiving work. 0 touchdowns. Going to read off this stat here. He's still out snapping all of his competition, not losing out like that. But week 3, saw Roshan Johnson take 33% of the work and out of the backfield altogether in terms of snaps. Was out targeted by Roshan Johnson 5-4. Roshan Johnson hadn't seen the field the first 2 weeks. Like Ben said earlier, Bears obviously looking for a spark. Their offensive line is trash. Maybe I'm holding on a little bit too much, and Ben, tell me if I'm being too emotional here, but I still think DeAndre Swift, he's still the guy with the Bears. He's the 10th highest paid running back. They obviously invested in him. He's only 25 years old. I'm going to hold on one more week. I don't think I'm going to cut DeAndre Swift just yet. Am I crazy for holding on, or what are your thoughts with Swift?
I'm not going to say you're crazy for holding on. I'm going to say you're crazy for having any stocks of him. I'm just a Bears hater.
Improved offense.
They paid him his agent. That's a damn good agent. But Roland, I mean, like I said, I love Roshan because he's a Longhorn. I'm not looking at. They're a mess, bro. Just like the Raiders, I don't want to really. They're going to be down and they're going to be passing a lot. The quarterback. The jury's still out. They're not going to go and bench him like Bryce Young, right? The jury's going to be out on Caleb Young probably for 2 or 3 more years. But the Bears were a very hot commodity like they are every year. I mean, we saw people betting Maserati Mitch for MVP several years when he was the Bears quarterback. So, of course, they get the number. We saw Fields MVP bets. Of course, when they get Caleb Williams, they expect to make the playoffs instantly. And it just hasn't been the case. Their O-line is all-time bad. All-time bad. I want nothing to do with the Bears. I know Swift is probably somebody that you got to be RB2 or flex option. If you have the roster spot to just let him chill, let him chill. But, guys, do not be starting DeAndre Swift anymore. Okay?
Yeah, I think DeAndre's – yeah.
He burns you 3 weeks in a row. Put him on the bench. If you still want to roster him and see if they're able to figure it out, listen, if you believe that the Bears will figure it out, by all means. If you don't think the Bears will figure it out, cut ties.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be as bad as they've been the first 3 weeks. But to your point, he is not startable right now. I benched him after week 1 because I got lucky with Jordan Mason. So he sprung in. So I've been able to play Mason and Lewis Swift and kind of just letting him chill there. But at what point do the Bears just say, F it, let's just go complete backfield by committee and just go Roshan Johnson? Khalil Herbert has gotten more goal line and red zone looks in last week than DeAndre Swift. And then the team is just a mess. I hate the play calling. I tweeted about it on Sunday. That 4th down option play to the short side of the field to DeAndre Swift might have been one of the worst play calls that I've seen in a while. I mean, they have ran a different running back the first 3 plays, and then they throw in DeAndre Swift for the last play and give him that terrible look. So it's just an all-around bad situation in Chicago. Don't think they're going to be that bad. If you can hold on to them, I say keep them. And that's kind of my sentiment for the next guy. That's Michael Pittman, another guy that you spend a lot on. He's expected to be probably your wide receiver 2 or flex, depending on your build. But through 3 weeks, 0 touchdowns for Mr. Pittman. And his first 3 games, his stat lines read like this: 4 catches, 31 yards, 7 points. 3 catches, 21 yards, 5 points. 4 catches, 36 yards, 7 points. Obviously, not all of this is on him. A lot of it is on Mr. Anthony Richardson, the highly sought after quarterback. People had high expectations for him fantasy wise. Ben, are you holding on in hopes of Michael Pittman still being the alpha in the receiver room and Anthony Richardson getting it together? What are your thoughts on Mr. Pittman here?
As a diabolical Anthony Richardson non-believer and Michael Pittman not being the deep threat on the Colts, which I I mean, listen, Anthony Richardson is completing 10 to 14 passes a game. Okay?
I think he completed less
What's
this past week.
what's the ceiling? What's the ceiling here for Pittman? What are we talking about? You know what I mean? I don't think that they're going to go away from Richardson. It would take something like injury. I did not draft Anthony Richardson. I have no stocks of Anthony Richardson. I don't believe in the quarterback. I think that here it's more of like Downs and Pierce that are more of like that Rashid Shaheed deep ball threat. I think you're lucky to get one deep ball, maybe a big pop touchdown from Anthony Richardson because we know he has a gun, but that's not Michael Pittman's role in the Colts offense. So if he's not the deep ball guy, if he's a possession guy, and you have a non-accurate quarterback, I mean those targets are going to be trash.
Yep.
I'm a Michael Pittman fan, but it's just not the quarterback for him. This is big player bust, and he's just not a big play type of routes receiver. They have the other guys for that. So I'm done with him based on the quarterback.
So you're cutting or you're benching?
I have no stocks, so I would say cut because I want nothing, absolutely nothing to do. I don't. I would never feel comfortable starting him, just of
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
bad I think Richardson is.
Yeah, putting, myself in the shoes of a Michael Pittman owner, I would say you almost have to keep him just based on where you drafted him. Like honestly, like you probably got him third or fourth round. I don't know if I'm tripping there, fifth round maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
But definitely, you drafted him as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. And I saw something funny, and I think this kind of sums up Anthony Richardson. I saw a tweet. He can make a throw that 99% of the league can't make. He also can't make a throw that 99% of the league can make in terms of those easy, possession route type of throws, those in routes, long out
Hitches,
routes, slants, hitches, stuff to keep the
timing.
chains going, timing stuff. He can't do it so far. And I mean, look, I drafted Anthony Richardson, I think in about 2 of the 5 leagues that I'm in. Hasn't killed me so far because of, the rest of the team's been okay. But I mean, you almost got to, it's like the Trey Lance situation. He has not played a lot of football coming into the NFL. Like he played almost like less than half a season or less than a season total at Florida, count his high school stuff, then going to the NFL. I mean, he's learning on the go still. I mean, he's an all-world athlete, talking about Anthony Richardson. But for Michael Pittman, you can't start him right now. I think you have to put him on the bench until he shows somehow that, hey, there's some rapport here and I can be the chain mover for this team. Because it's getting a little scary. I know media has been maybe talking about benching Anthony Richardson. Don't think that's going to happen for the Colts doing that. I don't think they're going to bench their former first round pick, top 5 quarterback. So yeah, I just got to ride it out with Michael Pittman for now. Honestly, kind of got to ride it out. I'm not going to go as far as to cut him. And again, leading into the next guy, I think I might have some of the same feelings. It's none other than Mark Andrews, tight end from the Baltimore Ravens. Guys, it's getting scary. Honestly, it's getting scary for Mark Andrews when you look at his stat line. Again, all 4 guys on this list, 0 touchdowns combined. Mark Andrews, through 3 weeks, his first 3 stat lines read like this: 2 catches, 14 yards, 3 points, season opener against the Chiefs. 4 catches, 51 yards, 9 points in that loss against the Raiders. Okay, cool. And maybe some resurgence there. But man, he went for the triple goose. He only got 1 target last week, 0 catches, 0 yards, 0 points, only 1 target. And that's because there's a lot of offense to go around. The Ravens had their way, put up 28 points on the Cowboys. A lot of that was on the ground, though. The scary part here, though, and this is where I'll leave it for you, Ben, he was out snapped 21 to 39 last week by Isaiah Likely in week 3. The coach said they came out in a lot of big sets that didn't really play to Andrews' skill set. Kind of weird. I don't know how much bigger Isaiah Likely is than Mark Andrews, but still 21-39, kind of scary. And on the season, he's down by 3. It's 121-124. So Ben, are you cutting Mark Andrews, or are you holding on to him in hope of the talent showing itself and the depression at the position in general this year?
Yeah, I've cut 3 guys, and I've cut the previous 3 guys.
You
Here, it's
have, you have.
also no stocks, but just the way that the tight end position is this year. I mean, Kincaid owners aren't happy either. Yeah, they got a touchdown last week. Kelsey owners are not happy either. They're not going to cut him. I'm not cutting Mark Andrews just yet. Like I said, I don't have him, but if he was on my roster, not saying I would start him, right? I'm not saying I would start him. He's got to show me something first, because this is dating back to last season, right? Where
Yep.
he didn't play very well and then he missed time. So I'm not cutting him yet. I am stashing him. This is a guy that you probably drafted maybe around the same round as Pittman, maybe a round before Pittman. I'm not cutting him. What it does tell me, Roland, as far as him getting out snapped, you said that they came out in big sets. That tells me Likely's probably the starting tight end, and Andrews might be tight end 2 on that team. The Ravens, we still said, they have Zay Flowers. Bateman did catch a fluke touchdown, but then they have their tight ends. Doesn't mean he can't be supported as a third option, for the tight end position. But him being out snapped by Likely in heavy sets, like you said, Likely's not the biggest guy. He's that athletic, playmaking type of tight end. Kind of tells me maybe Likely's the starter. And also game script, they were up. They were just running the ball. I don't know if you want to have Mark Andrews in there when you're running, have him get rolled up. We know he's brittle. He's been injured. Let's just avoid that. Play script didn't mean for passing. So not cutting him. I am 100% panicking and not starting him, though.
Man, you don't have any shares of Mark Andrews?
Zero.
Well,
Burned me last year. Didn't draft
and I was just gonna say, good on you, for not spending on Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, because I know Travis Kelce's not up here, but he's another guy that might as well be up here with the way that he started the year as well. Probably not as bad as Mark Andrews, but just overall, just goes to the common theme here. The tight end position has been down overall. I mean, we just talked about Noah Fant, six catch, 60-yard performance being, a standout in PPR leagues at 12 points. So all that said, I'm going to hold on to Mark Andrews. I'm the opposite of Ben in this game. I've only cut Zamir White, and I'm showing a little bit of patience on the other 3 guys. That includes Mark Andrews. A lot of that is, look, you drafted him probably, like Ben said, along where you drafted Michael Pittman. The draft capital is high. There's not a lot of other names out there. Injuries are racking up. You saw McBride get nicked up, and Laporta also. So Mark Andrews still a good option. I want to say, I still believe that he's still going to have his weeks. Like Ben, you mentioned, they got Flowers, they got Bateman, and then, I mean, it's always been Andrews. I mean, before Flowers, you would mention Andrews as a wide receiver 1, for the past couple of seasons. So got to think that that's going to show itself at some point this season. Hopefully it doesn't show itself too late, because again, if you're just carrying Andrews off the namesake and you're eating these goose eggs, hopefully you drafted well, but it's going to start to hurt you the longer you go down the season, and his value dissipates. Maybe you can trade him. I mean, but it's the ultimate
You got to
buy
have
low
a
or sell
touchdown week.
low.
You got to have
Yeah,
a touchdown
exactly.
week.
You
But
got to
Roland,
wait for him
here's
to
what I will
pop.
say: if I am an Andrews owner, I want to hear something from the Ravens. Because why isn't he on the field, bro? Is he injured? Like, what is it? Because for him to I think he only saw 22 snaps this
It was
past
21 to
week.
39. Yeah.
Yeah, 21 snaps. I mean, that's not good at all, bro. That's like a half of play for a starting tight end like he used to be. He was an every down type of guy. So what's the problem? What's going on? Like, I feel like
Hey,
the story isn't out on him.
and maybe you're onto something with, Isaiah Likely might actually truly be the Ravens tight end 1. And, to further on that point, or, to, continue on that path, if they're going truly, hey, it was a big set type of game. We were running the ball with Derrick Henry. what if that's just their philosophy going forward? What if they found success going in bigger sets and they want to run Henry because they just spent on him this past offseason? He still clearly has juice. I mean, the Cowboys at this point could probably make anybody look good, but Derrick Henry clearly has some tread left on those tires, looking good. And maybe that's just what the Ravens want to do this year. They want to go big. They want to, play to Lamar Jackson's strengths, a lot of read option, have him run the ball a lot. He's looked a lot fresher as a runner this year. So all of that does not play into Mark Andrews' hands. And it kind of gets scary. And if you did spend on Likely after week one, after that pop performance, maybe that's going to pay dividends going down the line if this snap count or this ratio continues. He almost doubled him up in week 3, 39 to 21.
That didn't mean he performed. I don't think that the people that spent on Likely have been very happy since they spent on
Sure.
it, because it hasn't been a good 2 weeks. But that's the tight end position, guys.
Yeah, that's the tight end position this year, unfortunately, until something changes. As we've talked about in prior shows, just, scoring around the league is kind of down right now. I mean, everybody was expecting that Cardinals and Lions game to be a complete shootout, but it kind of just stalled out. Offenses are still, working out the kinks. Talking about it with some coworkers earlier today, a lot of new faces and new places, a lot of rookie quarterbacks around the league, a lot of quarterbacks in different settings, a lot of new head coaches and play callers. A lot of this stuff takes a little bit of time to get ironed out. And if it doesn't get ironed out, it's maybe there's a change in philosophy, like we're seeing here in Baltimore as they start to shift to different sets. Ben, we had a short show, but we're almost at an hour. Do you have any other stuff you want to touch on, keep cut or, rehash some of the waiver wire pickups we talked about?
Just if Sam Darnold is still out there, I don't know the ownage percentage, but I would assume it's maybe at about 50%. Is that somebody that you're looking at stashing as a QB2? Are you on board with Sam Darnold as a QB2?
Oh, 100%. I like Sam Darnold. I like the offense that he's a part of right now. He's QB4 in 4-point quarterback leagues. Next couple weeks, he plays Green Bay, the Jets, and he's got a bye in week 6. But I mean, week 7, 8, and 9, some other bye weeks are going to be taking place. He's got Detroit, the Rams, and the Indianapolis Colts. Those are all indoor games. Those are all high-scoring games. Sam Darnold's shown that he can sling it in that Kevin O'Connell offense. I like that mention, Ben.
Yeah, because people jumped the gun to and I won't say jump the gun. They had hella performances, but Carr and Mayfield, we know that they were like the week 1 and week 2 pickups, right? And some people started Baker and some people started Carr this week against the Eagles, and they bit the bullet. And it was the same old Derek Carr that we jumped off the hill of last year, right? So is Sam Darnold going to be that type of player, or does he have? I mean, I think the Vikings kind of showed the league that they're probably for real.
Man,
and I mentioned to us in the group chat, Sam Darnold is younger than Joe Burrow, as crazy as that sounds.
Yep, he's only 27 years old, I think, or 26. Been in the league for quite some time. And Ben, to answer one of your earlier questions, he's owned in less than 20% of ESPN leagues right now. He's only at 16%. So definitely, and a guy that I don't think you're going to have to spend a lot on, because I still think that he's flying under the radar because he still has that, New York Jets stink on him. From being with the Panthers, has not had the best career so far, but definitely, in a resurgent spot right now with the Minnesota Vikings. Seem to have found his rhythm. I mean, when you're throwing to Justin Jefferson, I mean, that's a pretty good setup to have right in itself. You're playing indoors a lot of the time there in the Dome in Minnesota, and then you got to play Detroit in the Dome also. So, I mean, I like the setup for Sam Darnold. He did get a little dinged up. I was, holding my breath for him a little bit, but he was able to come back into that game there against the Texans, a game in which they won pretty handedly. So, yeah, I think the Vikings might be legit as a team, and I think Sam Darnold's going to be legit the rest of the year. Now, he has started off good before, but I mean, he started off good with the Carolina Panthers, right? I mean, and the Panthers are not a very good franchise. I think this is a completely different frame that you got to look at it. He's with a legit team in the Vikings. He's got a legit coach and play caller that understands quarterbacks and Kevin O'Connell. I like this for Sam Darnold. this year and hopefully for his career. So thank you for bringing him up. I like talking about Sam Darnold for sure.
I didn't expect him to only be 16% or 18% owned, like you said. That's pretty crazy. And just a little tidbit, he does get Jordan Addison back this week as well. We've seen Josh Naylor catch a touchdown in like 2 of the 3 games. Justin Jefferson has lived up to that first round pick. I know he fell in some leagues because some people just didn't believe on Darnold. I mean, he's been able to feed him, with 9, 10 targets a game. Justin Jefferson is wide receiver number 5 on the season, I believe. So the Vikings are legit. Underestimated them as a Texans fan this past week, and damn it, boy, was that a big piece of humble pie.
Yeah, man. Vikings definitely look good. That Brian Flores defense is definitely shutting people down and giving people problems across the
Aaron
league.
Jones.
Yep, Aaron Jones too, looking good. Well, Ben, it's been a fun Tuesday night chopping it up with you about waiver wire pickup, some keeper cut action. As always, oh shoot, that's from last week. Don't want to see that. But Ben, it's been fun. Any parting shots? I'm about to get us ready to sign off here. We're a mere few hours from these waiver wires, going official. So make sure to get your bids in. As always, thanks to everybody that's been with us throughout the show. And Ben, any parting shots?
No, man, just screw Survivor Pool. We'll see y'all on Sunday for the Sunday sit down.
See you guys Sunday. Laters.